Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show, and this is the Octoberthon. The Octoberthon, you ask? Well, it's October, it's Halloween month. We do a lot of episodes. We're cranking them out almost daily, basically. Is this what happens? This is what we do, because things are mad. Does it look like summer still outside? It does, because Tim's getting married in October, so we're recording a bunch in advance, but that doesn't matter
You're
for
welcome.
you. Yes, yes, you are welcome. Absolutely. And my cat Firefly is jumping up in my lap, which is notable for this because there was some kittens in the opening scenes of
Oh,
this film. But
okay.
yes, we are going to be talking about Nosferatu the Vampyre, aka Nosferatu Phantom der Nacht, aka Nosferatu Phantom of the Night.
Mm.
In short, we're talking about the Werner Herzog directed German Nosferatu film starring Klaus Kinski as Count Dracula. So, we're doing this one. We'll start spoiler free as we always do, and we will give you a warning in the middle before we go into spoilers. And that's how we're going to roll. So, yes. Tim, had you seen this before? Was this the first time watch for you?
Second time actually. I saw it once before. I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years ago. They're actually showing a print of it at a small independent theater
Mm.
out here. So I got to see it on a not a not a huge screen. It was a big screen, but it's like a small independent theater, not like a big
Yeah, yeah,
IMAX thing. But
yeah.
no, that was actually my first time a couple years ago. So this was only my second.
Cool. I saw this for the first time in high school. I believe it was in a box set, a DVD box set at the time, called the Box of Blood, and it was like all vampire
Okay,
movies. It was
I
an
like
Anchor Bay
this.
box set. Anchor Bay put out the Box of Blood, and it was
Oh, nice.
Nosferatu. I think Daughters of Darkness were in there. I can't remember. There was like five or six movies. I think there was a couple of. There was a Lance Henriksen one that was really dirt cheap. One of these cheap movies from the early two
Okay.
thousands. But the reason why this was notable is because the cover, the slip cover at the front, had like a plastic pouch with fake blood in it. So the cover actually had like blood you could squish.
Oh, I think I remember that, or
Yeah,
if it wasn't specifically that, I definitely remember like a gimmick like that on a movie. All right, that's pretty cool.
yeah. So that was in the Box of Blood. So, and this was the highlight of that said box. This was
It
the
sounds like it.
the crown jewel. What was the other thing that was in there? Oh, I think Near Dark was in there as well. But I think that was a double
Oh,
dip.
okay.
I think I already own Near Dark because Near Dark's fantastic. And but I said no, I'm still gonna get the box set because I want to see these other movies. Um,
I do kind of miss some of those like gimmicky like boxes or cases that they would do. I guess we still get them from time to time, but
yeah.
I feel like it's not as much. Or if it is, it's always like some huge expensive like $300 special edition of something. That's like, well, I don't need to have a Blu-ray set that looks like Pinhead's head or something like, you
I
know.
I think we are of a generation that have a particular fondness of the DVD boom of the early 2000s, where they were
Yeah.
just churning out so many movies and for all the time great editions. Obviously now it's like no, I want HD, but
Did you have a? It's so stupid looking back on it now, but um, I feel like kind of like the horror fan staple for like a lot of people in my high school was the Boogeyman DVD, or was it Boogeymen? I don't know if you had that. It was like um, basically just clips of like all the different like horror icons like Jason, Freddy, Pinhead, and
ah
I,
no,
I
I
think like
never saw
it,
this.
it was just like a compilation DVD that they might have. I forget maybe if they had bios on them, but then they would just show like a couple of kills from them or something. It's just just like a weird DVD relic that I'm like, oh, like
Yeah,
they don't really like do stupid stuff like this anymore.
I have to admit I'm not upset they don't do compilation things anymore because I hate
Yeah.
them with a passion. They're so
Oh,
pointless.
sure. Yeah.
I remember like after the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all
Mhm.
the DVD sets came out of all the seasons, which great. But afterwards, they did this weird thing where it's like, here's a single disc DVD of four episodes that feels Xander
Oh,
focused, and it's like, what's the
yeah.
point of this? What? Who's
I
like, I want to watch four random episodes. Like, piss off.
I I feel like they would do that with like I guess like similar like stuff like with X Files, where they would have like, oh, here's all like the mythology episodes on one disc or something, or I
Here's
don't know.
four episodes about ghosts. Have
Yeah.
the ghost disc. It's like, piss off. Don't want this
I think
stupid disc.
maybe the one thing I think that could possibly get away with that is and I don't even think they did this like for that long or something, but they might have put out like a compilation of the Simpsons Treehouse of Terror episodes, which that
Mm.
I can kind of see because that's like first of all, I think it was kind of before they were on full seasons were on DVD, but also like all right, those are different enough that if you're in the mood and you want to watch like all just the Halloween episodes, I'm like okay, that's decent enough. But yeah, it's obviously it's just to make money like with all these things.
Interestingly, just speaking of The Simpsons, I believe they eventually stopped doing DVDs for them. Like I think they hit like season
Yeah,
like 20 or whatever. I was like, yeah, we're not gonna do these anymore.
yeah, I think it was just recently,
Yeah.
and I think it was kind of like people were pretty upset about that because if I know the story correctly, I think they already had like um did commentaries and stuff for them, and then they just decided not to release
Oh.
it, and people were like, "Oh, what the hell?" But then I think they did like, "All right, well, we'll release this last one," and then I think like, but I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if most Simpsons fans I know like aren't even
Yeah.
if
I
you're buying
just
them at that point, it's for the collection.
yeah, like it's just frustrating that the show's still going, but they've decided the formats are defunct now
Yeah.
for it. So they're like, nah, we're not gonna do it anymore. But anyway, this is all a bit of a tangent. The point being is that Nosferatu, I saw for the first time in high school from this DVD box set, um, and loved it. Loved it. This was my first Herzog movie, first Kinski movie. I was kind of like, whoa, this is great. And I think it might have been just before actually I read Dracula for the first time
Okay.
in high school. So I'll just get the question out of the way just now before we start talking about it. But Tim, do you enjoy Nosferatu?
Move my cat out of the way. I do, yeah. It's man, it's like it's really haunting. I think just the like just the like the style of it and stuff, and like honestly, there's not really much to say. Like kind of like plot wise, I think like what's really enjoyable about this is just like a lot of the like set pieces and just how it looks and
Yeah,
just the
it's the imagery, it's the haunting music. It's got this very uh sort of monastery kind of main theme that kind of comes in and uh very gothic and it works. And yeah, I think yeah, I mean it's the story of Dracula. It's Jonathan Harker goes off to Count Dracula in Transylvania to get him to sign the papers for a house that he wants to buy in the city. In this case, it's a German city, obviously, because it's a German film, and
which I just think is like it's kind of dawned on me while I was watching this. I just think it's kind of funny that like oh yeah, like Dracula just opens with like this monster wanting to buy a house. Like
hmm?
that's kind of like the opening plot of it. Like you don't really see that a lot in the other horror movies. Like there's never anything about like Michael Myers having to sign an apartment lease or something. Like
Yeah, it makes sense though because he clearly wants to move to a populated
yeah, yeah,
area so he can feed and whatnot. And I think one of the things that separates not only just this one specifically, but also the original silent 1922 Nosferatu, is that they keep Dracula looking a bit more like he's described in the book, which is more monstrous. Like he's not the suave Bela
yeah.
Lugosi, like fancy man. Like he looks disgusting, and that's kind of the point. Like immediately he looks like monstrous, and it's like
Yeah, like
okay,
there's no way like in the Bela Lugosi like Dracula, like you can kind of understand when Harker kind of first arrives there. It's like, all right, this dude's weird, but like okay, whatever. Like maybe he's just an eccentric rich guy. Like this, it's kind of like as soon as you get there, wouldn't you be like, what is this
yep.
weird like rat creature thing? Looks more rat-like, which is fitting because there's a lot of rats in this movie.
There's a lot of rats. One of the things I like about it is just how like almost apocalyptic it feels that the
Oh yeah,
impact that
yeah,
he has when he gets to the city and like people just start dying and there's like coffins all over the place because people are dying and like and just dropping and there's rats everywhere. It feels like he's actually brought the plague, and that's actually what people think it is. They think it's the plague
yeah.
that people are dying from. And I love just this idea that like I feel like in other Dracula story or interpretations is like there's the threat of things going this bad that this evil will consume all if it's allowed to run rampant. In this movie, it like happens. Like
Yeah.
he's already like destroyed like half the people in the city by the time we get to the conclusion. And the ending's obviously a lot more depressing and darker than most adaptations of Dracula. Um, But this actually is probably my favorite adaptation of Dracula, and I think the reason why it's my favorite adaptation is because it focuses more on capturing the mood and more on capturing the feeling of Dracula than it does the just all the plot. Because Dracula's a pretty big book; it's like 400, 500 pages, and
You think that's a big book? That's cute.
it's big for a movie, is what I'm saying.
I'm just joking because I've been reading a lot of like Stephen King this year, and he has like a lot of like short stuff. But
Oh
like,
yeah, don't get me wrong.
also,
I'm well aware that it is like 3 times that size. I'm not saying it's the biggest of the big books. I'm saying it's meaty for an adaptation to a movie because 2 hours is not enough time to like do the whole book. Which I think is proven with the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula from the early 90s. That movie tries to incorporate all the plot, and it does a lot of the plot beats, but the problem I feel in that one is that it has to rush through it all so quick because it's trying to fit it all in, that I think it loses all the tension, it loses all the atmosphere, and because of that, I actually hate that adaptation. I don't like it at all.
I actually have kind of a fondness for it. It definitely has flaws, but there is a lot of stuff that I do like about it. I love Keanu, but man, he is just
Oh yeah.
that might be like the worst thing he's ever done.
Oh yeah, this is a bad time for Keanu Reeves. And I like the Bela Lugosi one, and I like the Hammer Dracula. There's a lot of Dracula adaptations that I enjoy.
Yeah.
But this is the one that feels proper monstrous and proper atmospheric. And to an extent, I include the original 1922 silent film in that as well. But
one thing actually, just before we kind of get off the Coppola one, I'm just very excited because I think actually this week they're re-releasing in a very nice hardcover the comic book adaptation, which was I know it was completely drawn by Mike Mignola. I don't know if he wrote it as well. Like obviously, he would have been working off the script, but he might have written and drawn it. But man, some gorgeous art in it.
In case you don't understand why Tim's excited by this, Mike Mignola is the artist and creator of Hellboy, who Tim like worships like the play. He loves Hellboy. He's Hellboy mad.
I'm like I'm basically like his Renfield. I'm just constantly just like eating comic book pages, waiting for the master to come visit.
Laughing maniacally between every word. Yep, absolutely. That sounds like Tim. Which I interesting. We got a new Hellboy movie in January, Tim, if you can believe it.
Where's the trailer? I mean, I believe it, but give it the trailer, man. I'm kind of worried like that maybe they're gonna push it back or something. I need that trailer.
Yeah, I'm starting to think they might push it as well, given there's no trailer yet. It's weird.
I mean, it'll come out eventually, so I'm
New York Comic Con, I guess now.
Yeah, actually, that's not a bad guess. Yeah, that would make sense. And then it's not too bad. I know it's October. It's horror adjacent, so it's be a good time to release it. So
yeah, of course, you're watching or listening to this episode in October, so it may have already dropped the trailer by now. So this conversation may be completely redundant by then. But so no, this is haunting. It's got the atmosphere and there's some changes that can like I don't know why the female lead is named Lucy instead of Mina, when in the book Mina's the main one and Lucy's kind of the friend, whereas here Mina's Harker's wife and Lucy's Harker's wife and Mina's like a minor side
like
character.
A friend.
Yeah. That's like to be fair, they're both pretty important in the book, but Mina's definitely the main one. Tim's wrestling with a cat apparently. I'm just seeing him.
Trying to chew these wires, so I'm trying to get.
It's almost a catastrophe, people. If I can speak properly. Whereas Firefly just pushed my keyboard out of the way and he's just lying on the desk. Yes, I'm taking this spot regardless of how inconvenient it is for everyone else. Yes. What are you saying, Tibby?
Oh no, she's yelling. I feel bad. I don't remember.
Oh my god!
I
was stalling so you could come back with your point, and
I think you were talking. I don't think I was saying anything.
I passed it over to you. You were going on to something.
Well, no, I only mentioned because you're talking about why they changed Mina to Lucy,
and
yeah.
So, do you have any insight? Do you have an opinion on the matter?
No, but have you seen the original like 1922 Nosferatu?
Yes.
I don't know if there were any changes in that I don't know, maybe if they're trying to pay homage to like that and Dracula or something maybe.
It's been a while since I've watched it. I can't remember. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it was Lucy in that as well. It feels like something that I feel like a few adaptations have done where they make Lucy the main one. I don't know if it's just because they like the name Lucy more. Um,
Possibly.
but it's not so much that the characters feel like exactly like the characters from the book. It's not like the plot's exactly the same, but it captures the mood. It captures the dread. Because one of the things I love about
Yeah.
the book in Dracula is the dread. And the other thing that you get a little bit of is the idea, because the book's all told. If you've never read Dracula, the book's all told through like journal entries and diary entries, and occasionally it'll be like a newspaper article. But it's never just like here's a narrator narrating the story. It's always like the journal after the fact. In fact, it's one of the when I first read it, I remember thinking, "Oh, this reminds me of Resident Evil," because in Resident Evil you find like files and stuff, and you read diary entries of like people who lived in the mansion that died via zombies. You know, itchy tasty, all that stuff. And I have to imagine that like I'm not saying Dracula invented that, but
Mhm.
I can't imagine that it didn't help popularize specifically for horror stories the
Mhm.
effect of what that has. And
Yeah.
one of my favorite
Carrie's
chapters.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say one of my favorite
What-
chapters in the book is when Dracula's on the boat being transported to the city. Um, the diary of the captain of the ship is particularly good, and there's a little bit of that in this where you get to see him writing his diary, and you get the implications of what are happening. In the book, it's like it's a long chapter, like crew are dying left and right. We don't know what's going on, and obviously Dracula's basically just murdering everyone on the ship on the way to the city. It's great. But it's just again, it's super like no, he's going to cause chaos if he gets back.
yeah.
It's that dread. It's great.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, it reminds me a lot of the Stephen King book Carrie, because they incorporate a lot of like interviews and like
Hmm.
like police reports and stuff like that into the narrative. So it's interesting.
It's kind of weird that in the few adaptations that I've never felt the impact or the inspiration of that element.
Yeah, I kind of thought like it's a very simple book, and the movie is pretty faithful. The original is pretty faithful for the most part, so I don't really know why they needed to do the remake. And I think the one thing I was thinking of is like, oh, I guess maybe you can do more with that format if like not like I want like a found footage movie, but you could incorporate like some elements like that maybe if you wanted to make it more interesting. But I don't. I saw it once, but I don't think they incorporated like too much of that into it.
Yeah, you could maybe do like a fake documentary style version of
Yeah.
Carrie. Yeah, to sort of mimic that. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, so yeah, one of the things that's great about this movie is just like the visuals, like Harker's journey to the castle, like his horseback ride, then his walk from because the town won't give him a carriage or anything like that. They're like, no, we ain't going anywhere near that freaky
The
ass
town
castle.
dicks. Yeah.
Yeah, they are they are
Rightfully so.
superstitious. Oh yeah, they're superstitious as shit for clearly good reason. They don't want to go up there. Um,
They need a Belmont.
oh, pardon me. Dracula got me in the night, and I'm hitting everything. Mm.
One thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and I don't know if I'm not like super well versed on Herzog. Like really, my first exposure to him was Grizzly Man, and
Hmm.
I always kind of thought of him more as like a documentarian, and I can almost get kind of like a documentary vibe from this. Like I don't know, just in some of the ways like it looks like it. I can almost get kind of like a
Yeah,
vibe.
when he's walking up to the castle and he's going through caves and there's like waterfalls and there's like it's very pretty and very the
Yeah,
haunting music playing as he's making his journey.
yeah, it feels
Um,
like very mood setting. There's like a lot of like a lot of, like focus on like animal shots and stuff.
yeah,
Like
well,
you'll see like
a big part of Herzog, and I don't think him as he's done a few big documentaries, but I think of him still as a filmmaker, in traditional film first, because he's done a lot of film. In fact,
yeah.
I was talking about I got this originally in a box set called Box of Blood. I was watching the Blu-ray of this now from a Werner Herzog box set, which was just Werner Herzog films, and it's got Fitzcarraldo and Aguirre, The Wrath of God, and his other films. And
Bad Lieutenant, hopefully.
doesn't have that one because that's it's all of his older films.
Okay.
I have Bad Lieutenant though on its own because Bad Lieutenant's very good. But
Yeah.
one of the running themes of Herzog is man versus nature.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of Aguirre's definitely that theme. You've definitely got Fitzcarraldo's that theme. Is trying to move a ship through land, like that. It's them trying to survive in the jungle while they're doing that. even the Christian Bale one that he did, Rescue Dawn, about 10 or so years ago. Even that, I mean, it's about prison, a war camp, and this pilot's been held captive. But even that's got this element of survival and trying to like survive through the conditions. Um, Even if it's a bit more man-made, and I think even in Nosferatu, there is an element of, uh, like nature made this thing. Whatever he is, nature made him, and we all have to kind of try and survive through it. Like, there's definitely a survival feel to most of Herzog's movies, and sometimes it's more focused on just nature in itself and the harshness of it, and sometimes it's a bit more obviously like this, where there's like an actual monster. But um, it's definitely a running Herzog thing. Is that? So it doesn't surprise me that he's also into making documentaries about bears and shit, because I mean this is a big part of his movies is like the idea of fighting nature and surviving it. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, yeah, you definitely like see that in this movie. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. It's uh, I don't know. I feel like maybe it's almost like a little hard to talk about again because like obviously like the plot, like there's nothing like you know big you really need to mention. Standard Dracula and stuff, but so much of it is just like
outside of the ending. I'd say the ending's different.
okay, fair, yeah. Um, but yeah, like so much of it is just like you're saying, like the mood setting, the atmosphere, really plays with that, and
Yeah, it's very slow paced as well. Of course, there's a lot of shadows. There's a lot of like just shots of the city, shots of buildings, shots of it's like because his journey to the castle is very like lots of these long shots of just walking through wilderness and kind of the harsh reality of it, I guess. But it feels like he's getting into no man's land almost.
Yeah, like if I feel like I feel like it's not really like a complaint or anything, but like maybe it might be like perceived as one, but it is a definite movie that you have to be in the mood for. Like it's not like because it is like a slow burn, but not in a boring way. Like it doesn't feel like it's dragged because even if it is maybe like kind of slow, again, it's just like it just looks real good or sounds real good or like there's usually something that can keep your attention. But it's definitely not something I feel like I can just throw on like at any time. Like oh yeah, just a little light watch I'll just throw on.
No, it's definitely a bit heavier than like most easy to watch horror movies where you just throw them in, or even just most vampire movies, which are usually a bit more I don't know, popcorny, I guess. Whereas this does definitely treat it a little bit more serious. This treats it a bit more like a film, a cinematic experience, if you will.
Yeah. It's definitely not it's not like Dracula 2000 or something.
Oh God, no. And I'm thankful for that because Dracula 2000 was a rough watch from what I recall. It's been a long time, and I'd like to keep it that way, if you don't mind.
We'll probably have to do it at some point.
Oh God, don't say that to me. Don't say that to me. That'll be bad Dracula month. All the bad Dracula movies. Watch that. Watch Dracula Dead and Loving It. Watch Dracula Untold.
Vampire in Brooklyn.
Well, that wasn't Dracula, right? But I mean, yeah, fair inclusion. Fair inclusion, yes. Also terrible. Dear. So I think one thing you have to mention as well, watching this, is Klaus Kinski playing Nosferatu, playing Count Dracula.
What's the deal with him and Herzog? Like, don't they like hate each other or something, or like, do they have like a weird relationship?
They definitely had a weird relationship. It's a love-hate relationship. They constantly work together. And Herzog, I'm sure, was sick of dealing with Kinski's shit. Kinski was a weirdo. Kinski was, there was reports from, like, Aguirre, Wrath of God, where he tried to shoot an extra at one point. I remember hearing stories at one point of Kinski. He used to go to hang out outside high schools to try and pick up girls. Like, he is a weirdo. He is a bona fide weirdo. But that's why he's kind of great in the movies that he's in, because he's always playing like crazy characters, and he fits in it so well. He just blends into Dracula in this. That's him. He's there.
That's funny because it kind of reminds me of obviously it's not based on this movie, but the original Nosferatu, the what I consider a very good underrated movie, Shadow of the Vampire, where
Hmm.
they have the based on the original Nosferatu and the guy that played was it Max Schreck who played the original
Sounds
Count
right.
Orlok.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, how he was like just way into character and like was freaking everyone out on set.
Yeah. It's
So
worth mentioning. Like,
interesting.
I mean, it says Dracula. Like, my subtitle said Dracula in this, and I'm pretty sure they were saying Dracula out loud as well. Like,
It yeah,
yeah.
it is they do mention this as Dracula, and then but yeah, the what I kind of assumed is this is probably a mix, a little bit of, taking kind of mixing Dracula with the original Nosferatu, which I mean, really, that's just supposed to be Dracula anyway. They just changed it to try to not get sued, which they still did. But
Yeah. Although I'm assuming that by the time this was made, that Dracula was just public domain.
oh yeah, at this point,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hence
But
why they could just use Dracula and Van Helsing and whoever else they wanted without caring.
it's kind of weird because yeah, I do think about Dracula as being this big public domain character who's been in like so many different things, and then I think it was actually recently I was listening to some stuff about the lawsuit between the original Dracula and Nosferatu, and it's fun. Obviously, that was way back in the day, but it's funny just to think like, oh, there was a time where like Dracula wasn't like public domain and someone was like suing for the rights. It's
Yeah, I mean,
funny.
1922. I mean,
Yeah.
what was that like? How was Dracula written? It was the late 19th century. I can't exactly.
Yeah, I think late 1800s. I'm not sure the exact date, but
Yeah.
yeah,
But still, relatively new at the time, I guess.
yeah.
Relatively. Uh, so yeah, so Kinski's great. Kinski's weird and everything. It is interesting how some of the characters are a little bit different. Van Helsing, of course, is skeptical in this. Usually, Van Helsing's the one who believes in vampires. He's trying to convince everyone that they exist. Here, he's like, "Nah, don't be silly, Lucy. There's no such thing as vampires." So that's a little bit of a change as well. Getting used to that. I really like the guy who plays Renfield.
Oh yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, which is funny because at the start of the movie, he's clearly already like under Dracula's spell, and they never actually explain like did he already go out and visit him, or like what, or is Dracula just doing this from a distance? Like they never explain that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the um I don't know what you call them, but I guess like the good guys stuff. It feels like it's downplayed a little bit in this movie. Like I feel like other versions, like there may be a bit more of a focus, and I feel like you don't really see them as much in this.
What do you mean, the good guys like Van Helsing
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah,
Yeah,
like Van Helsing and like them. Like I don't know, it feels maybe like a little more like Dracula focused and Harker and stuff, and just kind of generally like looking at like the effects of the town and everything.
yeah, sure. It goes from over. It's less about like forming the plan to hunt the vampire and going after the
Yeah,
vampire and whatnot, which is a big part
like
of the book. But like
I maybe that's what I'm getting at. Is, like you don't really get that kind of scene where like everyone comes together and they're like, here's what's going on and here's what we need to do to stop it. Like it feels like more you just kind of drop into them from time to time. And it seems like they're kind of like already like halfway through like
mm,
maybe a conversation or kind of like a plan or something.
yeah, I mean, it's a big part of the book, and obviously, I always talk about in horror movies. I like the characters to be proactive, and that does happen here to a point. There's this story ultimately in this movie is a tragedy, about how Lucy chooses to deal with Nosferatu. Because that's the thing. At the start of the movie, Lucy's just this like damsel who faints at the first sign of trouble. Like, oh no, Jonathan, don't go. I've got a bad feeling about this. Not this Transylvania trip. And then later on, she just faints left and right. But ultimately, she is the one who has the agency, who ultimately fights back. She's ultimately the one who deals with the situation. She's the one who believes that it's going on, and no one else believes her. And she like has probably the closest thing to an arc in the movie, as does Lucy. So there is definitely proactive elements in this one. It's still there. It feels more futile. Like everything feels very futile. It feels like if she's going to succeed, she's going to scrape by and no more, and that's it. As opposed to feeling super powerful. Oh, let's get a bunch of weapons and let's try and kill the vampire. It's not that type of
And
movie.
do you want to like I guess kind of leaning into it a little bit? Do you want to start to go into spoilers?
Yeah, we can go spoilers. So full spoilers from this point on for Nosferatu.
Because to just to kind of play off the that point you're saying is it does feel very bleak, and like even like the ending, it doesn't really feel like like they won. Like
Yeah, I mean,
It,
Lucy does win. Lucy achieves what she set out to
yeah,
do. She reads the vampire book that one of the gypsies gave Harker, and it's like you know first sunlight will kill him, and a pure woman might be able to like withhold him for some time, and she actually like lures him into her bedroom because earlier on he like comes to her. And it's actually one of the only scenes in the movie where you see the whole like the mirror, like the no reflection, because you just see the door shut behind her
in the
as he
in his
leaves.
shadow. So
Yeah.
that's like a great scene. Like just but there's a couple of instances in this where just the not to sound like a douchebag, I don't know, film student or something, but like just like, oh man, like the framing and stuff in some of these sequences are just so good. Like
Tim,
just
you don't sound like a douchebag because you're talking about framing. We're talking about movies. Framing's important.
yeah, but sometimes when people talk like that, you just kind of you know just want to pull up their underwear and put it over their head or something. I don't know.
One more word, and we're talking about aspect ratios for the next 10 minutes.
Oh dear lord.
So, yeah, so, no, so he comes in earlier on, and he wants love, because that's the other thing this movie does. It tries to play the loneliness of Dracula, where he is, like, eternally lonely, and it's almost like he hates being immortal. There's definitely this sadness to him. But he wants love from Lucy. Like he actually signs the papers to like move here as soon as he sees a picture of Lucy. He's like, "Oh, that's near where you live. She's there. Oh, I'll sign."
Yeah.
And that's basically the scene. And she lures him into the bedroom at the end, and he feeds on her. She sacrifices herself, knowing that it'll kill her, to just trick him into staying there until day breaks. And then sunlight hits him and he dies. And then Van Helsing finds this and is like, "Oh, I finally believe her. This is real. I must get a stake and make sure he's definitely dead." And he gets a big stake and kills her. But it's at this point where Harker, who he gets bit earlier on in the castle, and he's still himself at that point, and he sees him leaving. He sees Dracula just picking up coffins, like coffins and coffins, and putting them onto a cart. And he's like, "I need to get back to the city. I need to get back and save Lucy. Lucy's in trouble." And he gets back to the town, and then he gets like the horse, and he travels back. But along the way, he becomes sick, and it's obviously to us we're like, okay, I bet he's becoming a vampire because he's been bit. And at the end of the movie, so he gets back, and he has no memory of who anyone is, and he's kind of sickly and just sort of lying there most of the back half of the movie until the very end when he stands up, and Lucy's put like a circle around him of like usually it's salt, but I think in this
Salt.
case it may have been garlic or something like that because it was
Okay. That makes sense.
just because it looked like that more than anything else. But he gets the maid to like remove the circle, and he gets out, and he tells the authorities that Van Helsing has murdered Count Dracula, and they
Yeah.
arrest Van Helsing and take him away. Not that there's any police left because they're all dead, but they take him away, and then Harker's like, "I have much to do," and he's got the big nails, he's got the big long teeth, and he rides off in a black
Yeah.
cloak on a horse, and it's like, huh. So even though she defeated Dracula, the vampire lives on.
Yeah.
And doom and gloom. We're still depressed. Shit. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's kind of a great ending. Like, obviously, it's bleak and depressing, but yeah, it's like really cool, and it fits like the sometimes I'm not always crazy about the super depressing ending and stuff, but it fits the overall tone of the mood, which is this kind of like tone
Yeah.
of like despair and helplessness and
'Cause, I
just
mean,
like yeah.
Even earlier on in the boat, when it's like the captain's like writing about the crew going missing or dying of sickness, and we get to a point where we come back to him, and he's the only one left, and he actually ties himself on the top of the boat with a rope, just so he's there, and the boat ends up drifting into the city, into the canal, with him just dead on top of the boat, and then like the townspeople come and like check it out, and like, okay, what's this, is weird, and then they think there might be a plague, so they all hide, and then a couple of scenes later, we get to a point where Lucy's like walking through the middle of the city, and everyone's like not there. Like, there's boards up against the windows. There's like just like it's derelict. It's like almost post-apocalyptic. No one wants to come out because of the plague they think's there, and she obviously figures out it's because of the vampire. It's because of Dracula, and then there's a really depressing scene where she comes back through the town square, and there's people like dancing and singing, and I was really confused at first. I'm like, what's happening? Why are they all celebrating? And it turns out they all have the plague, and they're all dying, and they're just celebrating the last day. and I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is depressing as shit. Uh, but it's this idea that Dracula like properly is full on evil. He is straight up like the Antichrist, and he's bringing this plague and this death with him. And obviously, I'm sure the implication here is that he's actually feeding off a lot of these people, as opposed to it just being
Oh, yeah.
rats spreading the plague. But he brings a lot of rats with him, and there's a lot of rats kicking around. And
Yeah.
obviously, his teeth are very rat-like instead of traditional vampire teeth.
And most of the most of, if not all of the rats are like white, right? Like,
I think so, yeah.
yeah, which is just a what's kind of interesting about this movie is usually horror movies, especially with vampires, who only come out at night and stuff, usually they tend to be like a lot darker and stuff, and there's like a lot of stuff with this like in the daylight, and it's never like super bright because it does feel like more of a dreary
Oh, yeah.
kind of like setting, but it's still like, oh, a lot of this stuff is happening during the day, and I don't know, you get like a little bit more less like shadowy darkness kind of stuff.
Yeah, but it's kind of like it's obviously Dracula's not out and about during the day, but it's kind of like during the day they're feeling the effects of whatever Dracula's been doing,
Yeah.
and they're trying to like figure out what's happening, why is this, and it's the idea of fearing nightfall, fearing night coming, like that. That's kind of in there as well. Um,
This stuff was really effective for me too, because I forget if we ever really talked about it on the show, but like probably my biggest fear is rats. Like I hate
Oh.
rats so much. I just think they're so gross and disgusting. And if you ever want to see me like jump up and scream, just throw a rat my way. But
challenge
so like
accepted.
you dirty freak. I bet you do like just have a bunch of rats running around your house.
I got big furry creatures named cats, but no rats. No.
But no, I absolutely hate rats. So like all this like imagery of like these big empty town squares with just these like, I don't even know, it has to be like hundreds of thousands, well, not hundreds of thousands, but like hundreds or thousands of rats like just scurrying around, especially when they're like all running around like the dinner table with food and stuff. And like I was like, oh, this is just so gross to me. I
Yeah, I
hate
mean,
it.
this movie actually, I think, is probably a little bit more expensive than you think it would be. Just because when I
Yeah.
actually stop and think about all the scenes of this town covered in rats, and then the fact that they had an actual ship that they were, there's like an aerial shot at one point going around this ship, and you can see it's the ship because the captain's like
Yeah.
lying dead. So it feels quite big in terms of production value for the type of movie that it is. And the mood's off the charts, and the ending's bleak as shit. And you've got this sadness from him, and I think Lucy's an interesting character to a point because at the start, like I say, she's really scared, and then over the course of the movie, she realizes that Jonathan comes back and he's just kind of almost a vegetable, and he doesn't remember who she is, and he was coming back to protect her. Because for the first half of the movie, I think you could maybe like almost like be worried that it's going to be she's a damsel and all the men have to save her, and that's going to be the story. But ultimately, when he can't do it, she has to kind of step up and be like, no, 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 I have to try and solve this problem. I need to try and save everyone. And she has to do it quite tragically, of course, by sacrificing herself. But she does take the agency into her own hands. As bleak as it may be, it's the idea of she doesn't have a lot of good choices, but she still has a choice, and she makes the noble one. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but yeah,
It's great. And then one thing I really like about it too is it just feels very and again, maybe this might be going back to what makes him also like a good documentarian and stuff, is just a lot of the scenes feel very like lived in, and like they're not overly like flashy or anything. Like a lot of stuff, he'll just let like the scenes play out, and sometimes it does like feel a little awkward, like talking about before about how he's looking out the window and he sees him like lifting the coffins,
yeah.
and it's kind of awkward because even if he has all that strength, like it's still like a weird big thing that you gotta pick up, where like I feel like a modern movie would have some flashy close-up thing where he just kind of like hits it and like it flips in the air and falls onto the thing, like some big overproduced thing like that. But I like that he takes time to just show like stuff that's kind of like weird and awkward. And the other thing I was kind of thinking of is the scene where Jonathan's at dinner and like he cuts himself, and like
which is a classic Dracula moment, because that's in the Bela Lugosi movies when he cuts himself, and He's all like, bloods.
Yeah,
Although that said, I'm pretty sure in Lugosi's movie, Dracula doesn't actually just go in for the suck. Like, cause in this,
yeah,
like Dracula does grab his hand and start sucking it. It tries to like,
yeah,
oh, you could have got infected. This was the best thing for everyone.
yeah. And like I just love the again just really like trusting in like the actors and stuff and just kind of letting the scene play out, whereas I feel like other movies might feel the need to be like, oh no, we got to show a close up of Jonathan's face as he's horrified and then zoom in into like grabbing the hand or something.
Yeah, no,
Like
it's very restrained, and I think that's kind of what sells
restraint, that's a good word.
the weirdness of like when Jonathan looks out that window and he sees Dracula just loading up the cart with all these coffins and he's just picking them up as if he's got super strength. Because it just plays out all almost in like just one sort of wide shot, it kind of sells just the absurdity of it and why
Yeah,
it's kind of strange, as opposed to like this overproduced kind of moment, and it works really well. So, it's good, and even like sometimes like, they don't really go into it because in the book, like there's this mysterious like carriage rider, carriage driver who
oh sure,
takes him to the castle, and it's implied very heavily afterwards that that was actually Dracula in a disguise. In this, likewise, there's a carriage. He's already done a lot of the journey on foot, and this carriage shows up, and they never explain it. They never actually go into it or even hint that it's Dracula. But I mean, I'm kind of assuming it probably was, but it's just kind of
yeah.
there. And if you want to think about it, you can think about it. Yeah.
Okay, I'll think about
Oh no, I'm just
it.
like I'm just I think that's how it gets away with doing some of the stuff in the book without feeling bloated. Is that
Yeah,
it doesn't go down the path of actually feeling the need to explain everything. You know, how did Renfield become the obsessed Dracula worshipper? Yeah, it's explained in the book, it's explained in other movies, but here it doesn't feel the need to do it. It's just a
yeah.
factor. Uh,
Yeah, and again it just kind of is really helps it with giving this feeling of this feels like a real lived in world where hey, in the real world you don't know all the answers, you're not privy
mm,
to every like you know inciting incident and conversation people are having. Like sometimes it feels like no, we're just going to drop you in and like you're if you know the source material, maybe you can like gather stuff from here, but if not, like you're just going to have to kind of like sit back and enjoy it,
'cause
which in other movies could be annoying, but here it's effective.
Yeah, because when Harker goes to his office at the start of the movie, and Renfield is giving him the job to go to Transylvania, he giggles like in between like every other sentence, and it's kind of like he's already been taken over. Dracula's already got his hooks into him, and it's kind of exciting because he's actually luring Harker into a trap almost. Um, and you feel right there, okay, this is bad. This is bad. You should be concerned about this, Harker. You really should be, but here we are. So no, now Herzog's Nosferatu is an extremely moody, bleak vampire movie, and it's totally not sexy at all, which I love. It's not
Yeah.
so much that I hate every sexy version of vampires because I don't. There's some good ones. Are
Sure. Yeah.
arguably, I don't know. What's the sexy vampire story that I like? I mean, I guess
Well, I think
I guess Buffy isn't like
yeah.
they have the faces that change. In fact, one of the things that I like about Buffy in terms of just to compare it or to relate it to Nosferatu is that I really like that the Master in season 1 of Buffy. The whole idea with him is that he's so old that he can't change back to a human face anymore, and he looks like
Mm.
Nosferatu. That's kind of the thing is
Yeah.
that he's so old that he's sort of morphed into like a Nosferatu-looking vampire.
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
that's kind of fun.
and I'm sure people could probably even say like the original like Lugosi movie like at the time we probably think of it as being like a little older and stuff, but at the time like people might have been like, oh, like he's a very handsome man, and there's kind of like maybe a sex appeal to him, and
Oh
or
yeah, it's very
just the
suave.
fact that he's like seducing Mina and
Yeah,
stuff. And
and because I mean, because I wouldn't say near dark sexy, I wouldn't say let the right one in sexy. Like I feel like most of my favorite vampire stories tend to be a bit more on the monstrous side. It's like no, they're actually scary beings or they're
yeah.
tragic beings. Because in near dark, they're like there's vampires in that aren't scary, right? Like that treats it as some vampires can be good people. Um,
Oh, what, Vamp is a Vamp is a good sexy one, I guess.
oh sure, but that's really campy though. That's not
Yeah.
that's not going for actual serious movie. Um, but you take your Twilights and shove them straight up your sparkling assholes. Basically, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I want no
Yeah.
part of it. want no part of it. True Blood as well. True Blood ended up being garbage.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I haven't thought about that, that show in a long time. It
Yeah,
really went off the rails.
it was so true. I mean, I didn't really even like season one, but I watched all of season one, and I remember like getting into some of season two and just being kind of like, this is just really trashy. There's not really a whole lot going on here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not always opposed to like some trashy shows, and I would say I don't know how I'd feel if I rewatched it, but at the time I would say I liked the first season, maybe even the second season, but I don't know. I feel like pretty quickly on though, it was just kind of off the rails. I'm like, all right, what are we doing
Sucker.
here? Sucker. What a weird name. Sorry if that's a real name, but I'd never heard it before. It kind of sounds weird.
That's weird. That is a weird name. I give you it. But I'm actually disappointed, Tim. I've not made enough Buffy references this episode. We're doing a vampire thing, and I've only
I
mentioned twice.
You think you're disappointed? I don't think I made. Well, I had like one Castlevania joke, but it went by pretty quick. Like
I'm not gonna lie. I don't even think I noticed the Castlevania joke.
I think I mentioned something about I think I said the villagers needed a Belmont or something, but
Oh, okay.
I think we kind of skipped past it pretty quick.
I take it you're excited that Belmont's going to be in the next Super Smash Bros.
Oh, that was like I mean that made my day when that came out. I mean I'm a huge fan of Smash Brothers, but so I was already gonna get anyway, but that just was like holy shit, I can't believe it. And it's like, it was definitely like the kid in me was could not believe like, holy shit, like we're getting a game where like I can play as like Solid Snake, Cloud Strife, Mega Man, or like Simon or Richter Belmont. Like that is insane. Uh, Along with all the Nintendo characters, which I like, of course, but it's surprising to also have these other characters in this game as well. Uh, it's crazy.
Well, you enjoy that, Timmy. I will. I will abstain from Super Smash Bros. And basically Nintendo as a whole. I'm good.
All right, well, I guess if you want to deny yourself uh, the the Swedish
The
pleasures of
Swedish,
life.
the Swedish pleasures. What's Sweden got to do with this?
I don't know why I kept coming out of Swedish, but sure, why not?
All right. Nosferatu. It's fantastic
Yeah.
to sort of wrap back around. There's been a lot of tangents this episode. Uh, so I guess we should rate the film. Timmy, what are you going to rate Nosferatu the Vampire or Phantom der Nacht out of 10?
Uh, I do like it a lot, and in general, I think you kind of mentioned it a little earlier, but I didn't really weigh in. But I do love Dracula as well. I actually have not read the book. I own it. Actually, I owned a physical copy. It might still be at my house, but I also have a digital copy on my Kindle as well. I never got around to reading it, which hopefully I will correct soon. But no, I love the story of Dracula. I love him as a character, and yeah, he doesn't always have the best movies, but this is definitely one of the good ones. It's great. I'm gonna give it a high score of 8.5, but I feel like this is only my second time watching it. Maybe I feel like I appreciated it even more the first time, and I feel like maybe if I watch it again, I might appreciate it even more and bump it up a little bit. But for right now, I'm just gonna stick with the 8.5.
Yeah, straight 9 for me. I love this movie. This movie made me seek out other Herzog movies because I liked it so much. There's a
Is it
rawness to how he covers stuff that just kind of works for me.
is this the only like horror movie that he's done?
I think so. Nothing else is sticking out to in my mind. I'll click on his name here and see if anything jumps out at me. But no, I think most of his stuff's there's definitely elements of horror and tension in a lot of his stuff, but I wouldn't say anything else was a horror movie. Jeez, he's been making movies for a long time. This is a really long list. Um, but yeah. So no, that's Nosferatu. This is one that I've been wanting to do for on the show for a while. Because I love it so much, and I'm glad we finally did. Glad to have it as part of the Octoberthon, which of course is running all month long. So without further ado, we should probably do some promoting because it is October. And if you're feeling tis the season to be scary. So if you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, head over to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv and you can support the show, get some stuff early. You can do some various things for as little as $1 a month. And if you can't do that, don't feel too bad. You can, of course, watch the ads on YouTube. That helps us out a lot. Like, subscribe, all the usual things. But otherwise, that is us. That is us. I feel there'll probably be more that I want to promote come October, but I don't know what I'm going to want to promote in advance. Oh, and Tim's went quiet. Tim's audio's went off. It's completely
Oh,
silent.
I forgot. I muted my mic because I coughed earlier, and then I forgot to put it back on. But no, we have the dedicated Twitter, so any promotion
That's
can do
right.
that.
Yes, we have a dedicated Twitter now at Screams Midnight. You can check out that. There you go. At Screams Midnight. Get on Twitter. For your horror needs. Anyway, that is us. So what's exciting? By the time you see this, we should be really close to the new Halloween movie. So I'm sure hype is
Very
even
exciting.
higher when you're listening to this. Anyway, that is us. That has been Screams After Midnight. That has been Nosferatu the Vampire. Thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we'll see you